I'm Edward Barr from Lexington, Kentucky, and I'd like to ask, given the amount of capital in the banking industry, do you think that more banks should be buying back significant amounts of their stock, like SunTrust, versus just the token amounts that they're buying back or just the authorized amounts? And then also, related question in banking, are banks too focused on goodwill amortization when declining to buy other banks for cash, thereby using purchase accounting, versus the normal practice in the industry of pooling accounting, even when the stock that they issue may be depressed or undervalued?
Well, the first question about the capital in the industry, that you really have to look at that on a bank-by-bank basis, and there is a lot more repurchasing of shares by banks taking place. You mentioned SunTrust, but National City they bought it back, I think 5% of their, National City of Cleveland bought back 5% of their stock in the first quarter. There's much more repurchasing going on, and that's simply a judgment call by management that as to the level of capital they need going forward and what level of capital enables them to earn the return on equity that they think appropriate, and what they feel like paying for their own shares. So I think you have to look at that on case by case. We certainly like it. If we were to own a bank, we would, or own shares in a bank, we would like the idea of the bank repurchasing its stock at a price that we thought was attractive. We would think that they probably knew more about their own bank than some other bank they were going to buy, and that if the numbers are right, it's an attractive way to use capital. Your second question about goodwill amortization and purchase accounting versus pooling, we care not. At Berkshire, it absolutely makes no difference to us what accounting treatment we get on something. We are interested in the economics of a transaction. Some banks, some businesses generally, most businesses perhaps, prefer pooling because they don't like to take a goodwill amortization charge. We think our shareholders are smart enough, particularly if we make it clear to them the accounting consequences. We think they're smart enough to look through to the economic reality of what Berkshire's businesses are all about. And I think that some managements sell short their own ownership group by doing various kinds of financial acrobatics in order to have the charges come in a certain way rather than, as you point out, often they might be better off buying for cash rather than their own stock as currency, but they may prefer to use their own stock because they avoid goodwill charges. We've written a few things on goodwill in the past, in past annual reports, that might get to that subject. We don't care what accounting. We sort of rewrite the accounting for any business that we're looking at, because in our heads we want to have, in effect, a standardized way of looking at businesses. And if one company goes through pooling transactions and another goes through purchase transactions, we're going to recast them in our own mind so that there's comparability. Charlie?
Yeah, the published accounting results are in accordance with standard convention, and they're a place to start economic analysis. The figures are frequently quite silly on a functional basis. I'm not criticizing accounting conventions except for some. Yeah. But I think it's just a place to start thinking about economic reality. By their nature, they can't tie perfectly. They can't even tie very well to economic reality.
We regard it as a negative when we find a management that's preoccupied with accounting considerations, but we find it so frequent that we can't afford to use it as a total exclusionary factor. It really surprises me how many managements focus on accounting and the time they spend on it. It's really unproductive. If you find a management that doesn't care about the accounting but does explain to you in clear terms what's going on, I think you should regard that as a plus in owning a security. Zone 1.